Hey everyone, it's Laura from the blog artreallyhouse.com, and today I'm going to teach you how to make soap. If you are brand new and you're a beginner and you've been wanting to learn how to make soap, this video is going to be for you. So today we're actually going to be talking about cold process soap. So if you have been scared away from making cold process soap, this video is going to be for you. I'm going to talk about the safety that you need to know when dealing with the different ingredients that you need to make soap, talk about the different oils and fats that you can use and which ones are best. I'm going to be talking about adding in fragrances, essential oils, herbs and florals and coloring, but also I'm going to teach you how to make a very basic soap bar. So this video is for the beginner and also really just for someone that has kind of been wanting to make soap for a long time but has been a little bit scared away. Now if you want to make soap but you don't want to deal with doing cold process, you can make a melt and pour soap bar, and I have several videos on my YouTube channel of me making melt and pour soap bars, so you can look at those recipes and use those if you are scared away by making cold process soap. So the reason why I keep using the word scared is because I had everything in my home to make soap for several years before I did it because I was scared, and I know from posting videos that people are constantly telling me they're scared to make soap because of the ingredient lye. Now, lye is an essential ingredient to make soap. Without it, you will not have soap. Basically, the essence of making soap is mixing together water, lye, and a fat or an oil. And that pretty much is in a nutshell what making soap is. Now, of course, you have to be more exact than that, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but it's that ingredient lye that scares people away. And rightly so, because lye can be very dangerous. It's a very toxic, it is poisonous. If it gets on the skin, it can burn your skin. If it gets in your eyes, it can cause blindness. If you ingest it, it can be fatal. And so I understand why lye is scary, and that's the reason why my lye sat in a childproof container, like multiple shelves up in my bathroom closet for years before I got it down to make soap. Now, once I got going and I made a couple batches of cold processed soap and I used the lye, I realized that there are a few safety things, and if you do them, then making soap isn't near as scary as you might think. So to make soap, let's talk about the ingredients that you need. I kind of already mentioned this, but just I'm gonna kind of go through everything here to make this a very easy video for you. So you're gonna need lye, you're gonna need water, and you're gonna need some type of oil or fat. Those are the only ingredients that you need to make soap. Now you can also use essential oils or fragrances to scent your soap, but you don't have to. Your soap's still gonna work really well on lather. It just might not have this like beautiful smell if you don't use those, but that's okay. And then you can use different florals and add-ins to give it some texture, and also some colors to give it a different color. You can make your soap swirl colors, or you can just make this super basic and stick to those 3 ingredients that I mentioned and make a very basic bar of soap. Now, there are a few tools that you'll need when you're making soap. The first thing that you'll need is a digital scale. Now, the reason why you'll need a digital scale is because making soap is a very scientific process, and it needs to be exact measurements or your soap's going to be too runny, it's going to be too hard, it might not set up correctly, it might be too dangerous to use if you have the wrong super fat in your soap, or you have too much lye water compared to the amount of oils that you used. And so we're going to be using a digital scale when we're making soap. The next thing that you'll need is a stick blender or an immersion blender. This is a very simple tool that most people have in their kitchens, but I do like to recommend, if you have one, have it strictly for soap making, and you can use that when you're making your soap, and then you can have a different one when you are using it in the kitchen, because we don't really want to mix our soap supplies and like kitchen utensils together. And so I like to just have a separate one. You can get a very inexpensive one on Amazon. In fact, I'll link the one that I have down in the description box below, but it's very cheap. You can get one for like 10, 15 bucks. And that's what you're gonna need to mix your soap together. Okay, so your immersion blender, your digital scale. Next, you're going to need some type of molds to make your soap. You can use a large mold where you pour it all in and then you use a soap cutter to cut it apart. You can use a block mold where it's just like make simple little bars. You can use molds that make pretty shapes. You can use molds that put prints on there or even writing. If you go on Amazon or any type of like soap making supply store, either in person or online, you're going to see a variety of different molds that you can use. And it really doesn't matter which mold that you use. It just depends on your preference and kind of which ones you like. Now, of course, if you get the big block mold, you are also going to need a soap cutter. And so that depends if you want an extra tool. If you don't want to have to get a soap cutter, if you get one of the individual bars, those are just easy to pop out and then you won't have to have that extra tool. Now, as far as fragrances and essential oils go, adding them to your soap, it's very easy to do. Once you have your soap all mixed together, you can add that in. Now, I will say that I personally like to use essential oils rather than fragrances because fragrances are usually synthetic and they have extra artificial ingredients in there that I don't really want to be breathing in or putting on my skin or my kid's skin. So I stick to essential oils. But with that being said, it will make your soap will smell more fragrant if you're using a fragrance because that's what they are designed to do. And you can use more fragrance like a tablespoon, whereas if you use a tablespoon of essential oils, that's a lot of essential oils and that's really not diluted properly. And so if you put essential oils in there, you will notice that it has this nice scent, but it'll be a lot more subtle than it will be if you're using a fragrance. Again, that is up to you, but I do personally choose to use essential oils. Now, if you're adding in botanicals or petals or flowers or some type of florals in your soap, you will have to know that certain ones will mold or not really mold, turn brown when you add them into your soap. So like lavender buds can turn brown pretty quickly. It doesn't ruin your soap and it actually still works fine. It'll still have that really pretty lavender smell, but it won't look as pretty as it does when you make it on, let's say, like day 3 or 4 or after it's been wet in the shower. So if you're adding in botanicals and florals, be sure that you're using ones that don't brown or ones that are recommended for soap making, or you can simply leave those out. All right, so let's talk about actually jumping in and making soap. If you are ready to make soap, you have your ingredients, you have your tools, let's talk about actually getting started in making the soap. First thing we're gonna talk about here is the safety measures that you're gonna wanna take. So like I mentioned, lye can be dangerous if it's not used properly. So the first thing you're gonna do when you're ready to make soap is you're gonna be measuring out your lye and mixing it with your water. You want to make sure that you're stirring the lye into the water slowly, and this is going to make a chemical reaction. It's going to heat up. So you want to be using a heat-resistant container. Now, this is the part where we need to be using our safety gear to make sure that we're not getting any type of reaction from the lye. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wear safety glasses or safety goggles, something to cover your eyes, because if lye splashes in your eyes, it can cause blindness. So I just have some goggles that I keep with my soap making stuff. I put those on. And then secondly, you're going to want to wear some rubber gloves, maybe some high up ones that go up your arm, or long sleeves to make sure that whenever you're mixing your water and lye together, that if anything would happen to splash out, if it hits your skin, it could cause burning. I have personally gotten lye water on my skin before. It's not like horrible. It didn't like make marks on my skin, just a little bit red. And there was a slight burning sensation. But to stay away from that, or if you have sensitive skin, wear your gloves, wear long sleeves, make sure your skin's covered. Next, it's really important to do this in a well ventilated area so you're not breathing in the fumes from the lye water, because when you mix it together, it is gonna give off some fumes. So if it is possible, you can do this outside, or if you are inside, opening up some windows or doors in your home, make sure you're not in like a closed room. Now my next rule, and something that I do because I do have lots of little kids running around, is I make sure that I'm making soap during a nap time or after the kids are in bed when there's no kids around, because I don't wanna mix my lye water and leave it laying around and have a kid accidentally knock it over over or drink it or get it in their eyes or anything like that. So I just like to do this when the kids aren't around. Now, we don't have any inside pets, but if you have inside pets, the same thing goes for them. Make sure that the lye is put away and in a spot where your pets cannot get to it, because obviously we don't want them drinking it or getting into it or getting it in their eyes either. So what you're gonna do, like I said, you're gonna put on your goggles, you're gonna put on your gloves, and then we're going to measure our lye and our water. Now, depending on what recipe you're using, it'll determine how much lye and water that you are using. So for the recipe that I'm using today, I'm just looking at my phone. I pulled up a recipe here on my blog, and this is probably my most basic soap bar. It's my chamomile cold process soap recipe bar. And for this one, I'm using 4.76 ounces of lye and 10.65 ounces of water. So like I said, it's very exact. You need a digital scale for this. So I'm going to put a cup on my digital scale and make sure that I zero it out so it's not measuring the cup or the bowl that you're using. You're gonna measure out your lye and then add it to your water. You wanna make sure that the lye fully dissolves, so just like stir it slowly with a spoon. Now, one thing I will say, like I said, the lye and the water will heat up quickly, and this is just the chemical reaction that is going on with your lye. Now, after you have it mixed together and the lye is dissolved in the water, I take it and I set it up high. Usually I put this on top of my mantle, like I said, a place where my kids can't get it, even though they're not awake when I do this, but still I'm just gonna put it on top of the mantle because it's gonna heat up and get very hot, but I need it to cool back down to about 120 degrees before I mix it with my oil. So I just kind of set it aside, and while it's setting aside, I'm going to mix together my oils and fats. Now, the oils and fats that you use will vary depending on what type of soap bar that you're making. So like a coconut oil is going to make a nice hard bar, and olive oil is going to make a little bit of a softer bar. Adding in lard or tallow is going to make this very moisturizing. You can use avocado oil, you can use palm oil. Now, I have used palm oil before here. You want to make sure when you're sourcing your palm oil that it is a place where it's sustainable and that it is being sourced ethically, and so that is something that you can decide on. If you can't find a good source of palm oil, you can just make this without palm oil. There's several different oils, like I said, that you can use. Now, you can use a recipe like I am just right off of my blog. I have several recipes on there, probably like 10 or so different ones with different oils and fats, ones that are vegan, some that are made with animal fats, some that are made with just pure olive oil, glycerin soaps, and so you can kind of pick which ones you want to use. Now, you can also make up your own recipes by using a soap calculator. So I like to have that linked in a lot of my blog posts in case you want to make any types of substitutions. You can figure out what percentage to use of a different fat if you want to change it up. But in this basic recipe, we're going to be using 8 ounces of coconut oil, 14 ounces of avocado oil, and 12 ounces of palm oil. So I'm gonna measure those out in a saucepan. I'm going to melt it, and then I'm going to also set that aside, just like my lye water, and let the two of them cool back down to about 120 degrees. If it is too hot, or if the oils are too hot compared to the lye water, it might not make your soap set up as well as if they were both about that 120 degrees. So it usually takes a couple hours for this part. I just kind of set everything aside. I might go clean up what I was doing or just kind of go get other things done, come back to my ingredients once everything is cooled down. So now once everything is cooled back down, I just use a little like kitchen thermometer to check that I use to like, check your meat. You can use a kitchen thermometer for that. Obviously, again, you'll want to use one that's different than the one that you're putting in your meat because you're putting this in lye water. It is time to make the soap. And this is the really fun part because you're gonna see how this lye water and these melted oils are gonna turn into soap. So we're gonna pour the lye water into the oils, and this is where you use your immersion blender, and you're just going to mix this up with your blender until the oils and the water is all combined, and it makes like a cake batter consistency. That's what you're looking for. It's kind of thick. And this term that I'm gonna say now is a term that you use in soap making. Is called come to trace. To test if your oil has come to trace, you're going to put your stick blender, kind of stir it around inside of your batter, pick it up and let it drip down onto the top of your soap. And when it drips down, it should be able to hold itself on top of the other batter. And that's how you know that it came to trace. That's about a medium trace. And that's what trace we're going to be using for the soap bar that that we're making today. So now that it's all mixed together, now if you want to add in essential oils or a fragrance or a coloring, that's when you would do this now. So you can add in, like I said, some essential oils. I think the recipe that I have here was for chamomile soap, so I was adding in 1 teaspoon of chamomile essential oil. And I even wrote in the post that you can use more or less depending on preference, because I know some people like a stronger scent and some people like a less strong scent. So you can kind of customize that yourself. So you add in your essential oils, you add in your fragrance. If you're gonna do a coloring, I've used mica powder before, or you can use like a skin safe natural dye, mix that in, and then you can use your immersion blender again and just kind of mix it around a little bit to make sure that everything's all mixed in. Now, if you're wanting to do layered soap or multiple colors, you can divide your batter at this time into different cups and then color each one separately. And then that's how you can pour it into your molds where you layer it or swirl it or however you want. But for this one, let's stay basic and let's just talk about keeping your soap no colorants, pouring it, just no colorants. Maybe you added in some essential oils, but let's move on to the next step. Okay. So what we're gonna do now is you're gonna pick your mold that you chose and you're going to pour your batter into the mold. Now this time, you're gonna wait about 24 hours and then it's gonna be hard and it's gonna be ready to pop out of your mold. So you're gonna pop it out. If you used a big mold, this is whenever you're going to cut it. If you used a small mold, this is whenever you're just gonna kind of pop them out and they're gonna be ready to go. But you have to cure your soap. So curing your soap is the process in which it completely dries, all the water comes out, and you make sure that it's completely safe to use. Because like I said, that lye is still in there and we want it to all be absorbed into the oils and we want everything to be perfectly cured before we use it. So they do have fancy curing racks that you can use, or you can simply just line your soap up in like a 9x13 pan. You can lay it on a tea towel. You don't want your soaps touching each other, like the soap bars touching each other whenever you cure it. You want them all to be separated. And then just set it into like a cool, dark place. And this process can take about 3 weeks. So for 3 weeks, you're gonna cure your soap, you're gonna set it, like I said, on a tea towel, you're gonna stand them up in a 9x13 pan, make sure that nothing's touching, and just set it in a closet. I like to just put mine in my bathroom closet and let it sit there for 3 weeks. This is the hard part because you have to wait to use your beautiful new homemade soap, and just let it all harden up and get nice and cured, and then it's going to be ready to use. Now the curing process is also going to make your soap last a lot longer, because if you're using your soap before it's fully cured, it can melt a little bit while it's in the shower, and you don't want to waste any of your precious soap that you just made. So make sure you allow it to cure for about 3 weeks and then it'll be ready to use. So that is the basics of soap making. We went over the ingredients that you need, the tools that you need, the safety measures that you need to take, and really a basic recipe on how to make soap yourself. So if you're brand new and you have never made soap before, I hope this video made you feel more confident and ready to dive in and make a bar of soap. It is super fun. Once you get started, you won't want to stop. Like I've said, I've made dozens of different soaps now. Just it's fun to see the different combinations you can make. As you get more comfortable with the soap process, you'll have fun adding in some different colors and fragrances and florals to make these beautiful soap bars. So I'm going to put a link down in my description box below. I have a playlist with all my different soap recipes so you can try out some different recipes. If you want like written instructions like I have here, you can go over to my blog, arleyhouse.com, type in soap in this search bar, and a ton of recipes will come up. So if you like to watch, you can watch my video tutorials here on YouTube, or if you'd rather read and like print them off, you can go over to my blog and get them there. If you are new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I get out a new video every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video was helpful.